YouTube, what is going on? Theo Bean here. Today we are doing our Final Fantasy 16 main boss tier list. That's what the name of the tier is. This is essentially all the bosses that are associated with the main story of the game. We're not going to be doing any of the bosses from the hunts, since those are optional, but we're going to be going through these. I might be grouping some of these up together just based off the different scenarios, things like that. But without further ado, let's get started. Going through here, I kind of want to go not in order here. So we're going to jump around a little bit. And I think a really good place to start is going to be Fafnir, since he is one of the first bosses in the game. Where does Fafnir belong? I am honestly just going to put Fafnir in C tier. He's a very standard boss. I guess he's very earlier on, very basic. He has a couple different moves. He'll try to roll on you. He has like a lunge attack forward, and then he has his spinny McSpin to win move set that he does as well. Once you get him below a certain HP threshold, he's very easy. He's pretty straightforward, standard. I just killed him in my new game plus mode again. Nothing fancy, nothing special. He's just C for average. I think that's good, right? Next, let's go with, we have the Phoenix versus Ifrit fight here. Let's go with this. I'm actually going to put this in A tier, as controlling Phoenix fighting Ifrit as part of the demo, right? This is the main fight of the demo, even though there are other bosses, which I actually don't see here just with a quick glance. So that is kind of interesting to note that, right, if you don't know, as you go through New Game Plus, you can actually skip the demo portion of the game, so you can completely not do this, right, and continue right where you left off if you started the demo. But I'm gonna put this in A tier because it is pretty hype, and it is pretty much the main event that kind of sets things off for the rest of the game, right? This is the big iconic battle, the awakening of Ifrit, and the start of everything being set in motion for that, which is Final Fantasy 16. A ton of fun, even though it is very straightforward. All you're doing is locking on, shooting, and dodging attacks from Ifrit. It is still incredible. It's the first time we hear Soken's music, and it's fantastic. So I'm gonna go with A, since it is a good fight, but it is also, you know, integral part of the story. Let's jump in here. Let's go with Garuda. For Garuda, this is of course what appears to be Ifrit versus Garuda, or I guess this is also Clive versus Garuda. I think that's both of these are going to be included in here. This is the first real icon battle where we get to control Ifrit. I'm going to put this in A tier as well. Especially fighting gigantic Garuda on the island is, I think, a ton of fun. But as you're going through here, right, and then you fight her, she doesn't exactly die, so of course Clive goes crazy, and then Ifrit awakens, right? I think this was a ton of fun. I think it's worthy of, actually, you know what, I'm gonna put in B tier. I don't think it's as good as this. It is a fun fight, but honestly, I guess now when I'm thinking about how it compares to all the other boss fights, it really is just B. I think one of the things that needs to be said too is about all these boss fights is, like, even though they're good, the boss fights in this game are on such a high level that a lot of, I'd say even the middle tier boss fights are better than a lot of games and what they have to offer, just because of the cinematic value of all of these. So all right, let's go with the dragon. This is the first Crystal Guardian, and I'm just gonna put him at B. The thing is, a lot of these bosses, such as the dragon, we're going to be getting a couple of these. The same could be said about Fafnir as well, is that we get to fight them multiple times throughout the game. So they aren't really anything unique. Of course, there are a select few very, very unique boss fights, right? So we get a couple of different times we get to fight a bigger dragon throughout the game, whether that's through hunts, other things like that, or side quests. And all the dragons pretty much have the same move set. Some have a couple more skills than others. Fighting him though was a lot of fun. The first time we really get to fight a dragon. He is Akashic too, so he's covered in crystal dust. Like he's been snorting a whole bunch of the mother crystal. But fun fight. Nothing really insane. So I think he belongs in B tier, but definitely underneath the Garuda. All right, let's do this one. Typhon. So this is going to be for Typhon and Typhon the Transgressor. And this has actually one of my favorite battle themes, if not my favorite battle theme in the entire game. I'm actually going to put this in S tier because this is actually the first time we get to fight as Ifrit in the freeform mode, right? When we fight versus Garuda, it's kind of similar to controlling Phoenix. We have a couple different moves. We have the lunge, we have the attack combo, fireball, and dodge. Here we get to use all of Ifrit's kit, right? Where it's actually a real one-on-one battle. We have our dodge abilities, all that stuff. And this is super hype, and it's a big pivotal moment in the story as everything that takes place here as well. So Typhon and Typhon the Transgressor, 100% S tier in my opinion. Next, let's do the Iron Giant. Again, this is just one of those bosses we'll see multiple times throughout the games. I'm just gonna throw him in B. I think he's low B, maybe high C. He's again an enemy we'll fight multiple times. I do think the Iron Giant is cool. Of course, there are other variations of him that you can fight that are a little bit harder and do have a little bit more interesting moveset. Once I feel like you can get his combos down, he's actually extremely easy to either Titan block or cold snap, and then it's easy to just destroy him. But overall, fun boss. Can be really punishing too if you mess up because he's a slow heavy hitter. But B tier, low B in my opinion, so let's go with that. The Troglodyte, I don't remember how it's spelled or pronounced, but it's something like that. It's the assassin from the Ash Continent's army. I'm gonna throw him in C. I'm gonna throw him above Fafnir. Again, he is a boss during this point, but actually I'm gonna throw him below. But he will become a standard enemy that you fight throughout the game. This one has a couple different cutscenes, or I should say quick time events during the fight. It kind of separates it, but outside of that, really nothing really special. So let's go with that. Benedicta. I'm going to put Benedicta in S tier. Of course, right, this was part of the iconic challenge during the demo, which we got. And I can gladly say, having done it numerous times, this is the boss I fought the most, as well as going through it during my first playthrough, as well as now New Game Plus. This boss fight is always just so much fun, with this song playing in the background, I believe, as well when you're fighting her. It's just so well done. The quick time events, Torgal like eating her from her throat to stagger her. It's just so good from start to finish. It's that point where Clive realizes that he's truly special and that there's a reason he is the icon of Ifrit, right? Or Mythos. So, tons of fun, great moveset, great variety. I love this fight. It's just so good. Even though it's not very challenging, it's still S tier for me. Just FYI, I've already zoomed this in. This looks like another Iron Giant. It is. And this is the one on the elevator. And I'm trying to remember which one this is. This looks like it's beat in front of a crystal. But that is actually an Iron Giant on the elevator. I'm getting these two mixed up when you fight them. But again, I'm just going to group him up right there into B tier. I'll keep this zoomed in because, again, these little icons are pretty small. The Magic Cannoneer, which we fight again leading up to our first crystal. Right, so going for Oriflame or Drake's Tail? Don't quote me in that, it's probably wrong. Anyways, right, leading up to our first crystal in Sambrek in Oriflame. Cannoneer, again, very similar to the Assassin, where I guess he remains a mini boss throughout. He just doesn't become a common enemy. He can be like just a tougher enemy, especially New Game Plus, but again, I'm just gonna throw him in C tier. I think he is actually kind of annoying. Trying to manipulate his abilities and his moves can be pretty tedious, so I'm just gonna leave him there. Let's go with the marble. The marble, as they're called instead of Marlboro, that we get. This is an Akashic one that we get as we're entering into the Iron Kingdom. I'm going to throw him also in C tier. This fight felt exactly like the one in the demo. I honestly don't remember. I think there's at least one new move that he does, but it's pretty much the exact same. I think there's a move where he has a bunch of tentacles try to chase up to you. I kind of manipulated that by just using Garuda and staying up in the air so I kind of get hit. Overall, C tier, right? So that's it. I'm gonna start opening it up here. We'll get into some more better fights here. Jill. Of course, Jill is the first boss fight post demo. And I think Jill is actually a pretty decent boss fight. I think she is low B. It's pretty standard, granted, right? This is post demo and this is still kind of your baby steps as you're going through the game. She has a couple different AoE moves, things, dash things that you need to avoid. So I'm gonna leave her in low end B for that. And then we have Tiamat, who I'm gonna put in high end C. He is even more basic or generic than Jill. I think because he's right after Jill, they didn't want to make you fight another boss right after that. Again, very early into the game, they want you to kind of get the hang of things. They're not trying to have you see a game over screen multiple times from the very beginning. Who is this? Oh, okay. No, we're not doing that one yet. I see it. I couldn't tell because of the way the colors blended in. All right. Oh, I just realized. Oh, this is the dragon in Oriflamme. This is the other dragon. In the crystalline domain. Again, right? So perfect. I'm gonna throw that right next to it because again, these are very similar fights. A dragon's a dragon, very similar movesets. He has a different ability compared to him. This one was actually kind of a pain in the ass, I'm not gonna lie. But still, I think B tier is fine for that. Last one here, more the generic side of fights. Let's go with the Coral. Coral, there's another boss that just becomes a basic enemy that you can find out in the wild. These things are annoying, but once you get the timing down, they are not bad at all. I'm gonna throw him at the top of C. Really nothing special to say about these mobs or these bosses at this point. All right, now let's get into the good stuff. I'm gonna go straight into it. Barnabas. I think Barnabas is high H here. And let me explain that. And I know people might disagree with me. I was a little disappointed we didn't get a true Ifrit versus Odin fight. And that's kind of, as you go through it, it's kind of explained if you pay attention to everything that's going on during that fight. But I think Barnabas was a lot of fun. But it felt like the same moves just kind of went through a cycle over and over. And I think the worst part about the Barnabas fight is that it's after the Bahamut fight. And it would have had to have been absolutely insane to even match the level of that fight. So it's kind of like when you're doing a presentation in school and you always want to go right after the really dumb kid. This is the opposite. This was the presentation that went after like the kid with the perfect grades, perfect attendance, insanely smart, right? Perfect presentation, and then you have to go after that. Barnabas' fight isn't bad by any means. It's incredibly good. It's really cool, right? Especially as he's channeling the iconic powers still as Barnabas, but it just had such big shoes to fill. And I think people will feel the same way I did, that it was a little, I was a little saddened that we didn't get a little bit more. I felt like it was missing a little bit more, and there definitely could have been more, especially in regards, again, Ifrit versus Odin. I was a little bummed we didn't get that. If it had that, I think this is 100% an S, regardless of how that would have been. But for the time being, I think high A plus is totally fine. Let's go with this guy. I do not remember his name. I think we only fight him once or twice throughout the entire game. The first time we see him is in the Crystalline Dominion. He is a boss leading up to the end of that chapter. I'm gonna throw him in high B. I think he was actually pretty interesting boss fight. The way he was kind of like a battle mage, in which he would use different spells, Faraga, Thundaga, and Blizzaga, and then he would also kind of combine them together, which I thought was pretty cool and interesting mechanic in regards to a boss fight. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put him low A. I think he's okay. I just realized if he's low A, then Garuda is also low A. Okay, that's fair. I can live with that. All right, Garuda's being upgraded to low A, and he's low A as well. I actually thought this fight was pretty cool, and it was kind of kept you on your toes a little bit compared to other boss fights. All right, let's go with this guy. This is again another enemy that turns into a boss, or a boss that turns into an enemy later on throughout the game. I don't remember what they're called, but he is an Akashic type enemy, and essentially a minion of Ultima. I'm gonna throw him in low B. Actually, I think he's high C. That's fine. I think he's better than a Coral. He's more unique in that regard, so I'm fine with that. Next, let's go with Garuda's sisters. I think these two, again, a lot of fun, but I think these two are middle B. I'm gonna put them in front of the dragons because they were more unique. Even though actually that's not true, they're technically an enemy out in the wild as well. So regardless, I think fighting the two of them together was a fun fight. It was cool, different mechanics, especially how you had the cross grid wind attacks going through the arena that you would have to dodge earlier on, right? I think this is actually a good mechanic, especially for helping you learn movement and just get used to not understanding you can't just go in and attack non-stop. You have to kind of play defensively at times too. So I'm gonna throw that in B, high B. I'm fine with that. All right, let's do this. Icon empowered Hugo. This fight was actually really cool, and I'm gonna throw this in high A. And I want to say one thing about this fight is I felt like Hugo actually had a lot of different abilities, which actually made it interesting, especially when you enter the second phase of the fight. Collapse, go underground versus him. The different abilities he would use felt unique in that also with timing them with different attacks or counters was actually pretty tricky, because he would constantly combo attack you. So it kind of kept you on your toes of an enemy that would, you know, not just attack you once you can dodge, counter, and repeat. You would actually have to like wait for specific openings to attack. And he did feel like a more... Right, it kind of felt like if you're fighting somebody who's using Titanic block, where if they could block you and then they could counter you. Again, kind of teaching you just can't attack 24/7. You have to be careful when it comes to that. Next up, the Behemoth. The Behemoth, I think, was a fun boss fight. I think he is low A tier. I think his mechanics were pretty simple and straightforward. But you only get to fight 3 behemoths in the entire game. and I think they're actually a fun fight, especially since they do have a little mini damage checkpoint, which I died to the very first time I fought him because I just didn't realize that, and I was just kind of going through where I realized, hey, I need to kill him, or you need to move, otherwise you're just gonna die. So low A, fun boss fight. It actually felt like a late game behemoth. They did a fantastic job of taking an iconic enemy in the Final Fantasy series and making him an actual, like, a late game boss, right? I think they did a fantastic job with that, the way they incorporated his moves and all of that as well. So low A, good boss fight. Next, let's go with Liquid Flame. Liquid Flame, I think, is also going to be low A tier. This was actually a fun fight, and again, I like the incorporation of different moves and mechanics. He is another enemy as well who will combo and chain attacks together, where it's not just one attack. So you have to keep dodging until after his third attack, right? Nintendo logic, and then you can finally open up with your own abilities. Same thing with the different attacks that he has, the wyverns that fly, spit fire, dodging those lines of sight, as well as changing into like the corals, or kind of like, I guess there were flame corals that would dash across the arena as well. Fun fight, and I think the way they incorporated that into the story with Jill holding back the lava so Clive could fight him was pretty badass as well. So low A, in my opinion, for that one. All right, some of these, all right, now we're into, I think, for the most part, the big ones. We still have a couple other ones as well. So such as this one, I think this is the last one that's different from all the rest. I am going to just throw this again. This orb thing is another boss turned enemy. You only get to fight a couple of these throughout the entire game. I thought he was kind of tricky. I forget what move he had, but it would come at you incredibly fast, and timing could throw you off. I'm actually just going to throw him down here. Outside of that, he's really nothing special. It's not worthy of a high grade. Mid to low C. Now we're at the big dogs. We're at the big dogs. Let's just do this one now. I don't think it needs to be said, but the Bahamut fight is one of the most insane boss fights, if not the most insane boss fight I've ever done in a video game ever. Never in my life have I done a boss fight in a game and then had an emotional crash after having completed it. This fight was so hype that after the fight was done, like, the adrenaline high came crashing down, and I've never experienced that from a boss fight before. It was like such an emotional high of just like, holy shit, is so hype, and all these things going on with the, like, the Zeta flare, and then of course like Ifrit risen, right, and all these things. You're just like, it's mind-blowing after moment after another, and it's just like a true, this is the epitome of like the iconic battles, right? The scale that it's set on, where you're literally fighting in space. It's literally on another level, a different magnitude, and this was just so insane. It was so good. It was so hype. It was so intense. Bahamut becoming like his version of like Neo Bahamut, or like Bahamut Zero, by absorbing all the Aether out of the Mother Crystal, then trying to cast Zeta Flare. It was just so sick. It was so awesome. Easy S plus, without a fraction of a doubt in my mind. I think the best boss fight in the game. Yeah, it was just too good, and I knew after that fight too that nothing was probably going to compare to that, and I was right. It was just so good. All right, next one, I'm gonna combine these two together, but versus Titan versus Ifrit. and then as well as Titan Lost. I feel like these are two together, right? Especially since I'm going to combine these because again, this goes from Ifrit versus Titan into Ifrit versus Titan Lost back into Ifrit versus Titan. And I think this is also going to be A tier, and I'm going to put these right above Benedicta. These fights were so insane as well. This was the first time where you're just like, holy shit, like we're seeing icons go total roid rage by just absorbing absurd amounts of aether out of the mother crystal, and then again just showing the massive scale of icon versus icon battles even when it's just these two was insane. Incredible. Learning Brimstone, right, I think was fantastic too. As well as right when we learn I forget the name of the other ability, but how that's incorporated in the story and how Clive can absorb powers, right? I thought that was really cool and unique. Even this, right, seeing Ifrit's insane athletic ability to just, I mean, it's just something out of like an anime, or kind of reminds me of like the final fight of season 1 of One Punch Man, where it's just like essentially two gods fighting each other, and it's just so sick, so much fun, so much hype. S tier for these as well. All right, last couple fights here. Next, let's do Sleipnir. I'm not including the one before you go on to the boat. This is the actual fight of Clive versus Sleipnir. I think this is going to be, I think this is easily high A. I would put it, I think I can put it in front of Hugo. So Sleipnir gets to use Gungear. I don't know how he can do that, but he can, and it makes the fight, especially the second phase, even more fun. The way he dashes and teleports around kept you quick on your feet, was a lot of fun, and it felt like a good precursor to the main fight before Barnabas, of kind of what was in store and what Odin and his powers are all about. Super fun fight, especially since he gets to use the spear, right? Barnabas uses the sword. I thought that was actually kind of cool too, how they found a way to split that up into two fights. Fantastic job for that. Next is Ultima, right? So this is the first time we face Ultima. Saving this one close to last, and I think this fight is going to be high A. I'm gonna put this behind Barnabas. I think that's fair. Fun fight. You get a general idea of Ultima's abilities, right? And kind of what he's capable of. And I thought they did a really good job of showing, like, okay, like, this guy is an actual god. He does not mess around with his abilities. All the mechanics and everything that we've seen before start to kind of come together, right? In regards to, like, counters, multi-hit combos, things like that, dodging, AoEs, all that. So I thought this was a fun fight. So high A tier for that. Next, one of the most iconic parts of the story as well. Press L3 and R3 to accept the truth, right? Clive unlocking the limit breaker and coming to terms with the fact that he is the second icon of fire, Ifrit. He is Mythos, and then he cannot run from his fate anymore. This fight is S tier. Fighting versus Ifrit and then versus like Dark Clive also was kind of nostalgic too. I know, a shout out to all my OG gamers that are a little bit older that played Ocarina of Time back in the day. It almost felt like reminiscent of Link versus Shadow Link as well. It was just a lot of fun, and the way they incorporated that in the story, and then when Clive turns his limit breaker on was just so hype. So very high S tier as well for this. I'm actually going to put this behind. No, it's fine. I'm keeping it there. Okay. Finally, Ultima's perfect form, the final boss of the game. this was probably the most, I won't say cinematic fight of the game, but the way it ties everything in together, right? I think this fight really takes everything you've learned and puts it all together, especially incorporating all the iconic abilities we've seen before, right? All these moves that we've seen versus the other dominants, and these moves that he does against us, but it is on a completely different scale. So really putting everything we've learned to the test here. The final blow of the fight was incredibly awesome as well. It gave me flashbacks to Final Fantasy 14. Won't talk about that, but no context. 14 flashbacks as well, which makes sense for CBU 3. And just from start to finish, all the mini all the checkpoints during the fight as well, how those went down was pretty sick. And then how Clive is able to best Ultima was, I thought, pretty poetic, and it made sense too. I was pretty concerned about how we were going to be able to kill a god, but it just paying attention to the story and listening to what he says, it all makes sense in the end. But with that, that is the tier list. I think this is actually pretty fair. So that is going to be it for the tier list. I think this is actually really fair. Again, the best boss fight in the entire game is, in my opinion, Ifrit versus Bahamut, and I think people will agree with that as well. It was truly something special. So and again, right, I'll reiterate this has some of the best boss fights in a game that I've ever done, like ever, and I know people will agree with me on that. The boss fights in this game are on a different scale, especially the big main fights around the story, the characters, and everything going on was truly special and magnificent. So with that is going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much. I'm curious to have you guys let me know what you thought was different or what you would change in your personal tier list, because what I like about this is, right, this is all opinionated. Everybody's going to have a different viewpoint and different boss fights. So with that, let me know down below in the comments what you think, what you would change. I'd love to hear it. So that is going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next FF16 video. More videos coming out soon. Again, I know we've had a bit of a brief break here with some work stuff as well as just finishing 16. But with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace and deuces. See ya.